Prime Minister Stephen Harper, among millions of people observing the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall in Ottawa right now, he's joined by the German ambassador to Canada and the Minister of Public Safety, Peter Van Loon. Let's listen in.
From the German embassy, as well as Władysław Lizon, president of the Canadian-Polish Congress, also Alida Force-Manis of the group Tribute to Liberty. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui.
We are here today to commemorate and to celebrate the beginning of the end of communism and the triumph of the principles of freedom and democracy.
We are here today to commemorate and to celebrate the beginning of communism's end and the triumph of the principles of freedom and democracy. As the ambassador noted, in the lobby of this building, the Government Conference Center, this is where, incidentally, as he said, talks relating to German reunification were first held in 1990. Here there is a piece of the Berlin Wall. L'importance de ce jour
the importance of this day comes from the fact that this wall, of which this was a piece, could no longer hold back the aspirations of a people that wanted its liberty, its freedom. This didn't happen, obviously, very suddenly, but 20 years ago, on November 9, 1989, marked a point of no return.
The significance of this day is that the wall, of which this part was once a slab, could no longer contain the yearnings of a people demanding to be free. Of course, it did not happen all at once, but the point of no return was reached 20 years ago today, on November 9th, 1989. That is when, with the world watching, thousands of Germans from the East poured across a border that would soon cease to exist. En marchant, ils choisissaient les principes du Canada et de nos alliés.
They chose the principles of Canada and our allies, freedom, democracy, human rights, and rule of law.
They chose with their feet the principles long upheld by Canada and our allies: freedom, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Border guards, at first uncertain in the face of so many, became unwilling and quickly unable to stop them. The système communiste rendait son dernier souffle. The life had gone out of the communist system. It was a day of joy in Germany and of relief in Europe. No more would a people be kept apart. No more would Europeans fear that the division of their continent would lead to nuclear war. No more would the state seek to deny, to suppress, and to torment its own citizens. This piece of concrete is a tangible reminder of that. It reminds us that life in East Germany, the so-called German Democratic Republic, so impoverished the soul that the communist government required a wall to prevent its own citizens from leaving. Il n'est plus aujourd'hui que la tombe du régime qui l'a
now merely the tombstone of the regime that's
not as a barrier, but as a tombstone to the regime that built it. Once, however, there were 160 kilometers of concrete like this around West Berlin to keep East Germans from entering. It was topped with barbed wire and protected by tower guards. It shielded a wide area of raked sand in which guards were ordered to deal with any traitors, anyone who might try and escape across it. So what happened when somebody tried? Not long after the wall went up, a young man named Peter Fechter decided he would no longer live as just a creature of the state. With all the burning passion of youth, he determined to cross the wall and live as a free man. Like the people he could see and hear just meters away over the concrete and barbed wire in West Berlin. A city of light, it must have seemed to him. There he would find no commissars, no secret police, no torturers. And surely the job of a border guard was just to check passports, not really to stop people from leaving. For my friends, thousands of people tried everything to get out of East Germany and the other hostage nations of the East Bloc. Nobody jumped this wall to get in. So Fector and a friend hid near the wall in a carpenter's shop. The wall was only 2 meters high at the time, half the height it would eventually reach as the communists became increasingly desperate to hold back their restless people. Freedom looked so possible, so close. Choosing their moment carefully, Fector and his friend ran. Shots were fired. His friend made it over. Fector did not. Hit in the pelvis, he fell back, and there at the foot of the wall, his government allowed him to bleed to death. No doctor came, no commissar took charge, no border guard dared walk a few short meters to give first aid. In agony from his wounds, Fector took an hour to die. Peter Fector n'était que l'un des près des 200 individus qui auraient
nearly
péri au pied du
200,000
mur au fil des
individuals
ans
who died
dans
at the foot of that
leur
wall over
quête
the
de
years
liberté.
and in search of freedom.
L'un des centaines de
And
milliers
only
de millions
one of hundreds of thousands or millions
d'Européens de l'Est
of
qui ont
Europeans
perdu la
from the
vie
East who
pendant
lost
ces
their
terribles
lives
décennies de
during
purge et
those
d'emprisonnement.
terrible decades of purge and imprisonment, aspiring to free and democratic society that we as Canadians have always known.
Peter Fector was just one of almost 200 people thought to have perished along the wall over the years in their bid for liberty, and just one among countless hundreds of thousands of millions of Eastern Europeans who lost their lives in those terrible decades in purges and prisons, yearning for the free and democratic society in which we as Canadians have always lived. Peter Fector was only 18. I tell his story to remind us all of what was overthrown that day the wall came down. The wall the communists built, this wall, was more than a physical division. It symbolized another, darker view of life. Beyond the wall, people lived in freedom, exercised democracy, experienced justice. On the communist side, there was no freedom. Individuals did not matter. Justice and law were only what best served the interests of the state. People belonged to the state and served it. It was the difference between whether the government or whether the people, it was the difference between whether the people choose who governs them or the government chooses the people by choosing who will live and who will not. The difference between a system that is at its heart good and a system that was evil. Car il faut reconnaître le communisme
because we have to recognize communism
non
for
pas
what
un
it was.
système déficient ou inefficace, mais
efficient,
comme son cousin
system,
totalitaire, le
but like
fascisme,
its
l'antithèse
cousin,
même de nos valeurs
totalitarian
les plus
fascism,
nobles, l'une des deux grandes menaces du XXe
one
siècle
of
pour
the
l'existence
two great
même de notre
threats in the 20th
civilisation,
century for the existence
un
of our
mal qu'il faut
civilization,
comprendre afin qu'il ne puisse jamais
a matter
frapper
that has to be understood so that it can never happen again.
Because we should acknowledge communism for what it was. Not a flawed or inefficient system, but like its totalitarian cousin, fascism, the antithesis of our highest values. One of the two great 20th century threats to the very existence of our civilization. An evil to be understood so that it may never again be repeated. It is profoundly wrong to condemn whole populations based on class, just as it is to condemn them based on race. And it is profoundly evil to seek to resolve political debate through the annihilation of the other side, whether it is called a final solution, the end of history, or any such euphemism. Ce mal se manifeste sous
This
bien des
evil
formes
manifests
et il
itself
se
in many
réinvente
forms
d'une
and
génération
reinvents
à l'autre.
itself from one
La
generation
promesse
to the
d'une
next.
société parfaite.
The promise
Si
of a
seulement
perfect society,
Ces êtres indignes
if
sont
only
d'abord éliminés.
these terrible
races
people are
inférieures,
eliminated.
Les
Inferior
classes
races,
ennemies, les
enemy
infidèles.
classes, and the infidels.
This evil comes in many forms and seems to reinvent itself with each generation. The promise